Hey everyone, I'm Christina Joy. I'm the events coordinator here at Sankofa Video Books and Cafe. We've been open since 1997. Thank you for being here with us. Give us a round of applause. We are located direct on 2714 Georgia Avenue, 2714 Georgia Avenue Northwest, directly across the street from Howard University, HU. You know. Okay, no, I need a little more than that. If we have some
You said TU.
Okay. I think HBCU love with the house.
You know.
HU? You know. Okay, that was a little better. Tonight we have a very special guest. We have two very special guests. Denise Crittenden. The author of this amazing book, Where It Rains in Color. And we have Desiree French right here, our lovely host for this evening. So I will read their bios. We gotta get to know who's on stage. So Denise Crittenden is an Denise Crittenden's Afrofuturist sci-fi novel, Where It Rains in Color, earned an Indie Author Project Award for the state of Nevada and the 2023 Outstanding Book Award from the National Association of Black Journalists, NABJ. A veteran journalist, Crittenden is a former staff writer for the Detroit News and the Kansas City Star, and a past editor-in-chief of the NAACP's national magazine, The Crisis. In 1999, she became founding editor of African American Family Magazine, where she worked until 2008. As a motivational speaker and author of self-help manuals for teens, Crittenden was named one of the most influential Black women in the Metro Detroit by the Women's Informal Network. Among other honors, she was presented the Life Directions Mary Bell Children's Advocacy Award. Her various works include Millionaire Moves, 7 Proven Principles of Entrepreneurship, co-authored with business mogul William Pickard. These days, she prefers to conjure up fictitious worlds that glorify the Black aesthetic and offer bold new depictions of the African diaspora. She divides her time between her hometown Detroit and Spring Valley, Nevada. Desiree French is a former journalist who worked as a television news writer and business reporter at Forbes magazine, the Boston Globe, and USA Today. She was also a freelance writer for Urban Land magazine, writing its monthly community builders column. Over the years, she has worked as a speechwriter and public affairs specialist at nonprofit organizations and federal government agencies. In 2015, Women in Film and Video recognized her screenplay, Up Against the Wall, in its Spotlight on Screenwriters catalog. Her poems have appeared in the Bluebird Literary Arts magazine, Encore magazine, and The Black Voice. She has completed a summer writers workshop at the Hurston Rights Foundation in 2022. Desiree studied TV radio communications at Syracuse University, and later social media management at Georgetown University School of Continuing Studies. She's a native New Yorker who resides in Washington, D.C. Let's give it up. Let's have an amazing conversation. Thank you all for coming. Desiree, please take it away.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's get going here. I'm so happy to see Denise. We go back several years.
Many years.
Many years, several decades. And I'm happy to ask her a few questions about her new book, Where It Rains in Color. So I'll start for those of you who haven't had a chance yet to read Denise's book, for you to just tell the audience what the book is about. Just give us a brief overview, and then we'll take it from there.
Okay, thanks, Betsy. I'm not sure where to begin. Should I talk about the sea of colors that float across the surface of Swazembi? Yes, the planet I created is called Swazembi. I combined two African countries. Can you guess? Swazembi? Swaziland, yes, and
Zimbabwe.
oh my God, this group, you're the first group to get it like that.
Oh, come on.
So,
Let's go good.
okay, so I combined that and I created Swazembi. So should I talk about that? Because this planet is amazing. It's a tourist planet. I figured if I was going to create a black planet, I wanted to make it as spectacular and beautiful as possible. So it rains color on the planet. They're a floating mess. But they live underground because the colors are hypnotic. Now, underground, they travel from place to place, not in, I guess they have moving walkways and they have the typical thing, but they really, for those who have read the book, I think there's someone who's read it, you can tell me, how do they travel on Swazembi, that interesting way they have it moving from place to place? Do you remember? Yes.
I, from what I gathered, I haven't finished the book, I just started reading it tonight, because they're like floating through the air. They're floating through the air, and they're just kind of,
Right. They have a transit system known as the sweep. And the sweep, you stand there, it absorbs you, and they move through the currents. That's how they travel. So that's another aspect of the novel. Now, it's not what the novel is about. The novel is about this beautiful paradise planet, and everyone in the galaxy wants to visit this planet and go there on vacation. Because of the sweep, because of the floating colors, because of their spectacular underground, but also because they want to see the rare indigo. Now, the rare indigo, if you're holding the book, you can see the book, she is this beautiful midnight dark woman whose skin sparkles like diamonds. So she can do something called shimmer. And because of that, that's how she gets the title Rare Indigo. So that's what it's all about. It's about this amazing planet. Melanin is revered, and everyone in the galaxy envies Lileala, the Rare Indigo, and the entire planet because of this. Now, one of the things I want to emphasize about the Rare Indigo, Lileala, and about the book, Lileala is admired and held in high esteem, not despite the fact that she's black. She's admired because she's black. And that's what I did with the book. I kind of flipped the switch because I think we needed that. So what this book does is glorify the black aesthetic. Now, there's trouble in paradise, right? Always. You never have paradise without some conflict. So conflict does occur. I don't want to give it all away, but she runs into some problems, and because of those problems, she ends up having to go away to an asteroid. I will tell you that. And while on the asteroid, she begins to communicate with the ancestors. Who are the ancestors? Us. The Earth has been destroyed 5,000 years ago. They're on this planet, Swazembi. But she also communicates with their direct ancestors, the mysterious Dogon tribe of Mali. Now, if you know anything about Africa and African history, you know that the Dogon are very real. Swazembi, fictitious, the Dogon are real. And I'm not going to reveal the Dogon's secrets yet, or why they're so mysterious, or why it's important that she connects with them, until we get later into the conversation. I'm just giving you the gist of the book.
Right.
And I will spoil it. Okay.
Okay, good. And so, with that overview, it begs the question, how did you come up with this storyline? What was your inspiration?
Yeah, one person said to me, Denise, I admire you did that, and you weren't even high. Someone did say that. And I want to call someone out in the crowd, because Gerald Fears is a Washington Post reporter. He said to me once on Facebook, he was talking about the Wizard of Oz, and he said, God, that guy must have been tripping on something. And I was like jumping in, defending him, and that's why. But if you will notice that on the cover, one of the authors who reviewed the book called it a fever dream of a book. And I love that description of fever dream, yeah. Like, you know, Dorothy on the Wizard of Oz, what was she having? A fever dream. She was in the midst of a fever, and that's when she had this dream. So, I will admit this, the book came to me in a series of dreams. I kept having dreams about this woman wearing a hood, and she was standing somewhere on a cliff. And then I finally had one major dream that was a culmination of all of the dreams, and that's the one that shook me. Because I saw this same woman, and she was being taunted by these beings that are kind of translucent, and they said to her, "We sentence you to the keloid planet." And she responded something about, when I speak in the Nekotep tongue of my father, and I didn't know, I woke up, I jotted it down, and I had to get to work. I was at the Detroit News at the time. I didn't have any idea what any of that meant until I finally had a chance to start the novel, and I pulled my notes out of the drawer, and I started writing, and when I started writing, the dreams returned. Yeah.
Wow. So you said this started when you were at the Detroit News, so that was some years ago.
Yes.
So this was a labor of love, right?
Yes.
Yeah. How long did it take to write the book?
Well, it didn't take me, okay, I wrote it in 3 months. But what I wrote in 3 months, turns out that was just a skeletal version. I was in between jobs. I just left the Detroit News, and I was going to take a job with the Crisis magazine. I really hadn't been hired yet, but I was trying to get that job. So I only had this, block of time, and I was just writing feverishly, getting it done. And then I stuck it in a drawer. Well, actually, I got an agent, couldn't sell it. It really wasn't ready. It was just something I threw together hastily, and it sat in the drawer for years and years. When I finally got back to it was back in 2000, I'm going to say 18, something like that. And I had some time again, finally. I was doing some ghostwriting, and I had time between projects. So I pulled it out, and I was revising and building. I was expecting the dreams to come back too, but they didn't. Then it was 100% me. I had to do it all myself. But over the years, in between having the dream and being able to get back to the book, I was paying attention to what was going on in society, and I was really being bothered by the fact that Black women were still being pushed to the background. And I was learning more about melanin. I attended a melanin lecture. I happened to watch an episode of Star Trek, and I was excited because they were going to a Black planet, and Gene Roddenberry's team, they always do a good job, but they didn't go deep enough for me. And I feel like as people of African descent, that's our responsibility. I wanted to hear more about, I wanted them to explore. I wanted them to explore some of our unique traits, even our hair, which we'll get into later. Our hair is something that needs to be celebrated even more. So I wanted to do more of that. So as I saw that, and then, I'm not real sure I should always bring this back, the Psychology Today ran a study, a research project by someone, I guess he called himself a scientist. He actually decided to conduct research on the fact that he didn't perceive Black women as attractive. And I felt like, excuse me? And so, is anybody hear about that study? Everyone then I run to someone who heard about the study. I was angry at him, but I was also angry at Psychology Today for publishing it. They didn't publish it in the magazine, but they published it online. And Tamron Hall was the anchor who had to report it. And you know how beautiful Tamron Hall is. And I saw the expression on her face, and I was like, I feel you, Tamron. I don't get it. And so there were all these things happening in society, and I knew a lot about the Dogon tribe. So when I went back to rewrite it, the original inspiration, the dream, but then other inspiration that continued over a period of time.
Because I was going to ask you, it seems like you touched on some of it. What kind of messaging or messages were you trying to convey with the book? What is it you wanted to get out there that you really wanted to stress and that you wanted people to be aware of?
Okay, well, there are a lot of messages, and I try to hide messages because you don't want to hit people over the head with them. And I don't know if for people who read it, I don't know if I do or not. But I wanted to convey the message that we don't see with our eyes, we see through the lens of social conditioning. I wanted to convey the message that beauty is a social construct, because some one said, oh God, why is this novel focusing on beauty? Because here's my thing, even your plants you have to talk to and admire. You know, ignore your plant, just give it a water and never admire, never say, then it's gonna wither and die. So as women of the African diaspora, we deserve that too. So my purpose was to elevate us, you know, that old song that touched me so much when I was younger, black girl, precious little girl, let me lift you up where you belong, and I just felt like that hadn't been happening. And when I read other sci-fi novels, if we were in the novel, it just seems like it was still there, that tendency to not respect our beauty, our skin tones and all of that. So that's part of the message, but also the message is at a certain point, even the so-called antagonist, so she is an antagonist, she's pretty bad, but even she gets defensive and says, well, people on Swazembi, they're supposed to be so beautiful, well, who are we? And she says in one of her quotes, beauty is just a self-aggrandizing perspective of people with power and privilege. She's saying it to criticize us, because it's basically what she's saying, who has any right to put a claim on beauty? So that's part of the message too, but also there is a message when you read the book, you'll see a veiled reference to the fact that sound, when it reaches a certain octave, becomes color. I don't know if everyone knows that. So that's in there too. So the book is just filled with message after message after message, along with the fact that Africa is incredible, and I wanted to shine a light on Africa because we don't honor it enough. You know, we honor it in terms of Wakanda, you know, and Swazembi is another place. But when I talk about the Dogon, yes, and we'll get to that. The Dogon, I wanted to share their message as well.
Yeah. And let's get to that now.
Okay.
What is their message? And when you talk about this tribe, give us some perspective too about Afrofuturism
Right.
and how this plays into that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. So anyone here know about the Dogon tribe? You do? Okay. Not sure.
I'm not sure if that's one thing.
Well, okay, first I'll talk about the Dogon, and then I'll talk about Afrofuturism. The Dogon is a tribe in Mali in West Africa. They live on the Banyagara cliffs, and they live in mud huts. Even though they're living in huts and they have absolutely no technology, they know more about the cosmos, about the stars, about other planets than Western scientists, Western astronomers. Now, a group of anthropologists were passing through, this might have been even in the 1800s, and met with the Dogon, and the Dogon were telling them about a star called Sirius. They call it Potolo. But in the West, astronomers were aware of a Sirius star, Sirius A. The Dogon says, no, there's another one right next to it. They call it Sirius B now. They call it Potolo. The anthropologists argue with them. There's no other star. What are you talking about? And they kind of ignore them because they had no technology. Fast forward, what telescope is invented? The Hubble telescope. And then in the West, they see it. Like, what the heck? There is another star there. And it's prominent. We just couldn't see it. So they go back to the Dogon and they said, how did you know this? And the Dogon said that beings came to them from space on spinning arc, and that these beings taught them everything about the cosmos. The Dogon have very advanced knowledge of the cosmos. Like I said, they know more than we do, and they have celebrations once a year to honor these beings' nomos from Potolo. It is referred to as Dogon mythology. My thing is, if it's mythology, then why is it true? And where did they get it from? And so as someone who likes to explore and not stay within the realms of everyday thinking, I love living in my imagination, I ask the question, what if? That's what you do with speculative fiction, you ask what if. And so my what if is, so if the Dogon were in communication with these beings and the transatlantic slave trade was going to happen, but these beings have said, hey, you know, some of you want to get out of here, you know, and carted them to another planet and created their own planet. So Swazembi, the world I created, is actually, I consider them the descendants of the Dogon. That's some of the, so that's what I'm saying. So I'm also saying, what if it's all real? You know, I'm just looking at all of those aspects of what if, and that's what you do with science fiction, but with Afrofuturism, it's a way of saying, what if the future is 100 times better for people of African descent than it is for us now? What if? What if we became the leaders of the galaxy? And I don't, of course we have to look at the past. And ironically, that's what the name Sankofa means. That Sankofa doesn't represent, it's that ghost, and it's looking behind itself. And what it's Sankofa, isn't it Ghanaian, Sankofa, the term? And so it's saying that you look to the past for guidance as you move into the future. And so that's what, ironically, I do in Where It Rains in Color. She's looking to the past, so she starts communicating with the Dogon at a certain point and learning about the past that she doesn't know about. But basically, what I'm saying is that what Marcus Garvey once said, that we need to look so many years into the future. Our past is important, yes, and we need to learn our past. But if we keep focusing on the oppression and the devastation and not loving ourselves enough, which I don't feel we do, then we're going to just have more of the same. So I believe, and this, my favorite quote is, the past may be stained, but the future is absolutely spotless. So what is ahead on that empty blank canvas? I want to paint a better picture. Yeah.
And I think that's really important. I think that's really important, particularly when you're talking about the future and people of color.
Mhm.
Basically, what we're saying is we're going to be in the future.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And you can have all these space movies and shows, but we're going to be a part of the future. So
Right.
it's our opportunity to write and put ourselves there.
Right, because even Maya Angelou said that. She reminded us that we're the hope and the dream of the slave. So they were dreaming, and what were they dreaming of? They weren't thinking that they were going to be on a plantation all of their lives. Even though in some ways we kind of still are, but we won't get into all that. We're far, far, far better off than they were. And so we want to imagine something that's so grandiose and so far, such a major improvement from where we are right now.
So looking at your main character, Lolita, what does she represent?
Lileala represents an empowered Black woman who believes in herself the way she is. Because I think that there's nothing wrong with the Eurocentric ideal. There's nothing wrong with it. But I do like the idea of us embracing what's unique about us. And so what Lileala represents is, what if we took the whole expression Black is beautiful and really lived it? And that's what she kind of symbolizes to me. And one of the things I could point out right now, if you think about, okay, let's just go with Black women that you see in certain parts of Africa, and they're carrying heavy loads on their heads. And they're only, you see it in other parts of the third world, but in Africa, they don't use a single hand at all. And I just feel like we don't marvel at even some of the traits that are just absolutely amazing. When I read up on it, I was told, and I read, this is true, that the US Navy has been studying these women for years. We're taking it for granted, but they're studying them because they're trying to figure out, how are they doing that? It's almost supernatural, but we don't take it as supernatural. Or they're just some poor women in the third world. No, they're not. They're absolutely magical. It's like, and you just wonder what it is. Is it the electromagnetic energy of our hair? Is it us downloading the UV rays of the sun? What is it? Unfortunately, men can't do it. They say, of any race, and only Black women can do this. And when you see them moving, it's like they've been studied, and when scientists study them, they call it the pendulum effect, and they get people who are experts in locomotion to try to figure it out, and they can't figure it out. But that's because I always say that Black women, we are the women that the world will never understand. And I want us to own that, and that's what Lileala represents.
Very powerful, very powerful. Now, after her, who would you say is the most important character following her in your book?
Okay. There's some people I think in the audience who've read it, but I'd say Ahanate. In fact, one of the reasons I admire Ahanate so much is that she becomes a Rare Indigo and she runs from it. Lileala grows and decides that there's so much more to her than that, and she's not so caught up in her physicality anymore. But Ahanate rejects it right away. She never really cared about it. She always had this vision. And for that reason, I have various quotes from Ahanate sprinkled at the beginning of some of the chapters and all that, because I like Ahanate a lot because I perceive her as profound.
Just say it.
Sorry, guys.
Just say a little bit about who she is.
Oh yeah, I'm just
Put her in
saying,
perspective.
Ahanate, some of you, I saw you doing a sneak peek reading the prologue. Well, Ahanate in the prologue because Ahanate was, Lileala is named the Rare Indigo. You have to win that or earn that position. But she has a predecessor, and her predecessor is Ahanate, who, if you'll find in the prologue, there's reference to her. Yeah.
Okay. Well, speaking, you said something about a quote or something, but what struck me when I was reading the book were all the proverbs that you have in there,
Mm-hmm.
and you created them.
Yes.
So, like, before each chapter in the book, before
Maybe I should hold
each
that
chapter,
thought.
each chapter begins with a proverb, and they're so wise. You know, you read them. Like, I'm just gonna throw a few out there. Like, looking at the beginning of the book in chapter 1, there's a proverb at the top that says, "In the mind of the rebel, laws do not have eyes." Now, is that a setup for what we're going to expect, or we can
Right.
sort of,
Because Lileala is sort of a rebel. Yes.
she's
yes.
a rebel?
Yeah.
And then in another chapter, I just found them to be so beautiful. Fast forwarding to chapter 5, there's a proverb that says, "Breezes are lost memories trying to find their way home." I love that.
Well, a backstory about that little quote, because some people have said to me, well, are they from you? I'm like, well, yeah, because I wrote the book. If I had quotes and didn't attribute them to someone, I attributed them to the fictitious character, and I am the fictitious character, so yeah. But anyway, the backstory to that quote, anybody who knows me well knows I love to go for long walks. And I'm living in Vegas now, but one of the reasons I don't like living there a lot, and I have to go back to Detroit in summer, is I like to be in parks and in the woods. And some people get upset because I'm walking alone, and I have a former walking buddy that nature. And so anyway, I was out walking one day and just paying attention to the breeze. And I always have the weird questions, the sci-fi mind of what if. What is it really? You know, maybe there are really our memories. And so as I was writing, and I jot things down in my journal. So when I was coming up with the proverbs and the Swazembian like doctrines and all that, I was borrowing from that.
Okay. And there's another one in chapter 6 on page 64. Never ignore footprints left by pioneers.
Yeah, I think that as people of the African diaspora, we really need that. We really need to be reminded all the time that those who walked before us left many, many lessons, and let's respect those lessons, even as we look to the future. That's the Sankofa, looking to the past and taking it to the future, yeah.
And the last one I wanted to share, because they're throughout the book, at the top of every chapter. In chapter 9, let's see.
And,
Sorry if you
Yeah,
can't hear me.
forgive us as we struggle.
I love these proverbs, and the last one I wanted to share is in chapter 9. It says, "As we take one step, O grace of the ancestors, please help us take 2 more."
It's interesting that she read that one because I just told everyone that all of the proverbs are from my own mind. There's one that came from the mind of my mother. And I took that and I turned it into a prayer. When I was growing up, my mother used to always say to me, if you take one step, God will take 2. And I decided to turn that into, into this, that was her personal thing. And I figured, okay, I could use that.
Okay. Well, we're getting close to the time where we're gonna take questions from the audience. But whatever messages did you want to share, or any topics you wanted to touch on?
Okay, so I want to say to everyone here, especially to the Black women, I believe in 2 concepts that you probably don't hear of a lot. One of them is morphic resonance, and the other one is punctuated equilibrium. Morphic resonance happens when an idea reaches critical mass within a species. And you know what I mean by critical mass. When enough people start thinking about a concept or a thought, then that idea or concept starts to have a ripple effect, and everyone begins to believe it. And we see that happening, many examples of that. But I really like to take it to the next level. And the next level for me is punctuated equilibrium. And I don't know if you're familiar with this teeny little bug called the aphid. Ants farm aphids for milk, like the way humans farm cattle. That's the way ants farm aphids. And so they're just these little things, but they're pests, and they eat away at plants and crops and all of that. So farmers hate them. But what the aphid does, a lot of people don't realize, is that when it's like say it's eating its way to the top of the leaf, and now it's running out of leaves, and it has no space and doesn't know how it's going to survive because it walks. So where is it going to go? The aphid can sprout wings instantly. Punctuated equilibrium. When you reach a stage that you must change instantly, you do it by believing. That is where we are. And that's why I'm appealing to Black women. I'm saying, I don't care if you wear a weave, I don't care if you press your hair, I'm just saying, whatever you do, love it. If you're wearing a relaxer spray, still love it in its natural state. If you are dark, love being dark. If you're light, love being light. Love the whole spectrum. Love the fact that our hair resembles the double helix of the DNA. Did you know that? Did you know that the coil of our hair represents the way energy moves through the universe? If we look at energy waves, we look at thought waves, we look at radio waves, we look at all waves, they move, they spiral. That's the way all energy moves. So I'm just saying that if we start embracing these little arcane, unique qualities, even something, you look at the coil, if you want to create something that moves, like you put a widget in some kind of device, it's always a coil, because that will propel something forward. And when a snake is ready to strike, what does it do? It coils. So they call our hair our spiritual antenna. Think about all these things more. Honor them more. Understand that we have hair that defies gravity, and no one else on the planet has that. The more we do that, the more we will embrace ourselves and move toward this punctuated equilibrium that I think that is critical now. It's time for us to change. Enough is enough. And by that change, I mean just loving for. That's the new Black aesthetic. And that's what I'm hoping with Rare Rings in Color. The new Black aesthetic.
Okay, we're going to open up the floor for questions.
Thank you. Congratulations, Denise. That beautiful cover of your book. Let's talk about that. How did you meet the artist? And it's a beautiful cover. So tell us about the cover.
Well, I don't know the artist. my publisher is Angry Robot, and Angry Robot outsourced the art to an artist. I believe her name is Morgane. And this is what she created. I think the woman's absolutely beautiful. I personally think the slit could have been a little lower, but anyway. I think it's a little high, but I didn't design, I think she did a fantastic job though. It does catch your attention.
Thank you.
It conveys the colors.
Yes, the
As
colors
well, and
and the beauty and the, and I was telling Desiree today that if Where It Rains in Color, the title is a double entendre, if you think about it, because it does rain in color on the planet, but the people of color reign. R-E-I-G-N. Yes.
I was wondering, outside of like school, what was your creative influence like? I know you talked about loving being in nature and your mother, but like what has been your own self-education towards having this expansive imagination towards, I guess, Black love and Black beauty?
Wow, that's a deep question. Okay, let me think. What promoted me toward Black love? I guess because, that first quote, in the mind of a rebel, I have the mind of a rebel, and I went to Catholic school, and I remember in the back of my mind when the nuns would say things, I would challenge it in my mind. So I was always just searching for truth, and I consider myself a candid person, an honest person. And when I have taught writing, I've always said to my students, the best writing, and I'm sure the writers in the group would agree, the best writing is honest writing, sincere writing. And so if you're sincere and you're searching, you come up with ideas. And getting out in nature does it for me. My dreams, of course, and just getting out in nature, because when I walk alone, people sometimes get offended when they want to walk with me. But when I'm out alone, that's when the ideas flow, because the first part of the walk, you're thinking, and then after a while, the thoughts are just being downloaded. They're coming to you, and that's a major source of inspiration. I've said to people, back in the day when people were all using headsets or whatever, always listening to music when they walk, that's fine, but I've always tried to encourage people, get out and walk in silence. Try silence sometimes. You'd be surprised at the information. I've heard it put this way: be silent and listen for the footsteps of God. And that's what it kind of feels like when you just are out, just silence, that's all. That's what comes from silence.
Yes.
So I wanted to ask you, what attracted you to Afrofuturism, and how do you, I know you said you mentioned your dreams helping you, like, tapping into your creativity, but, like, what's a way that you practice it, like, every single day when you're writing?
Okay, repeat it. Okay, can you repeat the question?
No, you repeat.
Oh, okay. What ways do I practice Afrofuturism? How do I practice Afrofuturism every day? Well, I guess I don't write every day, but when I write, I don't stick with what is. I'm always looking ahead, and I don't believe in living in a box. So you know how people love saying that popular expressions, think outside the box, but then they say it, but they're not doing it. I actually do it, and it bothers some people sometimes, but I can't, then answer your question, I can't seem to help it. I don't really fit in it. I'm just one of those triangular pegs that just won't fit inside the box. So my mind always goes there. It's just always, I have this overactive imagination that I can't seem to do anything about. So I'm so glad to be writing this because it gives me a release.
Any more questions? I have one more.
Right here. And then it's, no, go ahead, and then we'll do.
You know how when you're, especially fiction, the characters stay with you, So Lileala, but she is just such an amazing character. She just stuck with me for a long time. And the world that you created, sometimes I would just cry. Because you read things, and especially when we read our stuff, this all it did remind me you know, the way that you did it with the Proverbs and stuff, I thought about Octavia Butler. But Octavia Butler, you know, as brilliant as she is, I would be really down. And then this was like a boost of serotonin to me, this book and the world that you created and the, you know, this beautiful woman who was just so rich, you know, and multi-dimensional and all. But I wanted to ask about the love interest. I can't think of his name. Yeah, can you give me some background on the inspiration for that and what was he supposed to represent?
Well, I wanted her to be in a relationship. When I start.
Here.
It's on. Oh, okay. When I was first started the book, the first time back in whatever, long ago, way back in a galaxy far away. No, I'm just kidding. Back in '94 when I first got the time, '93, to write the first little short version. At the time, I was dating someone named Otto, but we weren't really dating. We just met, and he was in Florida, and we were talking on the phone. But he was doting. His personality was just doting, and that's the kind of energy I wanted her boyfriend to have. So there was no real backstory except that I wanted her to have, as you know, what she refers to as her devoted. I wanted her devoted to be very devoted because that's what Black women deserve. Yeah. Unfortunately, his character didn't stay. He wasn't as strong as he needed to be, and I have no idea why I did that. But there were still a lot of strong Black male characters. Her dad, and then Brian were strong Black male characters.
And just say briefly, who Brian is in the book.
Well, Brian, when she ends up on the asteroid to heal her skin affliction, there were other people of color from other parts of the galaxy, not from Swazembi, who are also there. One of them is a friend. She becomes good friends with a guy named Brian while she's there. So Brian, that's who he is, and her dad is crazy. Yeah.
Hello, fellow Detroiter. 2 questions. What is the effect of, has growing up in Detroit, sort of as your basis, your nexus, been a big influence on your writing, your world view? And are there plans to put this on Audible or something like that?
It is already on Audible. Yeah, so if you don't, if you want to listen to it, that's an option, because it is an audiobook already.
Is it your voice?
Oh, no, not at all. I don't know they hire actresses.
Okay.
Yeah, she sounds really good, yeah. And they asked us if we wanted an African accent, and my agent and I decided kind of a culturally ambiguous, she has an accent, it's kind of African, kind of this, it's kind of a blend. But, so Detroit influence, you think so? Okay, so I would say not really a Detroit influence, but I did spend a year in Zimbabwe. As a Detroit news reporter, I applied for a fellowship, and the Rotary Foundation granted me this fellowship to study for a year in Harare at the University of Zimbabwe. And while I was there, I traveled through other parts of Africa. That's when I learned about the Dogon while I was there, and that's when, believe it or not, when I observed people going into trances. I hadn't ever been exposed to that before. I don't think I ever actually watched it, but they talked about it all the time. And they would talk about it as a matter of factly, as we might say, what we had for dinner. And that stuck with me, that you go into a trance and you connect with the ancestors. And so there were some other Zimbabwean influences, the jacaranda trees. I love them so much, they're so pretty. They were prevalent all over Zimbabwe. And the balancing rocks that you'll see in the novel. So I don't know that there's any Detroit. Maybe there is, and it's subconscious, I can't think of it. I'm from Detroit, so that's it. Oh, you know what? The Detroit influence, that Mims, she and I went to high school together. She used to get up and read poems with such passion. I still remember that. And that could have been an influence. You.
Wow. Someone else had a question up
Did you have a question? Yeah, thank you. Just quickly, you know, you talked about the male character being created on the basis of a relationship that you had. Can you talk about any of the other characters who were actually inspired by people you knew or know in your life?
The interesting thing is you don't know that someone is inspiring your character. I just finished a YA novel that my agent is looking at now. We're getting ready to get it ready to go out on submission. And I started reflecting, well, that character is this person. Oh my God, I didn't know. So as I look at Swazembi and some of those characters, I guess I could say some of them may have traits. I can't even begin to imagine there's a villain, my antagonist, who I can't imagine who inspired that character. I think that we draw from all over. That's what I was doing. And so I'm thinking a couple characters, like for those who read the book, there's a clairvoyant by the name of Cherry. Cherry came to me in a dream and she was speaking in that syncopated speech and in that manner. And then I have a character who's 30 and he looks like a little boy. Well, when I was 30 and I looked real young and I went to Egypt and no one was with me. People kept saying, where are your parents, where are your parents? When I was 30, I still looked like a child. So that's where that came from. So you just pull it from your subconscious.
Thank you.
Hi, Denise.
Hi.
When I think of the title of your book, I'm reminded of Stevie Wonder's lyrics in the Stevie Wonder song Saturn, going back Saturn, where there something glows but rainbows, moonbeams, and orange snow. I wanted you to talk about the people who influenced you to write sci-fi, the authors, Black authors, and also now that you've moved from journalism into this space, what's the state of Black sci-fi writing right now? Who are some people who you're meeting, and how smart are they, and what are some of the stuff that you would recommend to other people?
Okay, this is a hard question. Okay, we'll leave it to you, Dale. Okay. So, well, I'm, of course, admire Octavia Butler. Who doesn't? I hope there's no one in the room who doesn't like Octavia Butler. She is just so phenomenal. And I'm to give a backstory about her, as the first Black female sci-fi writer, she was the daughter of a domestic worker and a shoe shine man. And, but she has this, this imagination that was just otherworldly, but also I like her because there was a message there. I'm finding that not all sci-fi has a message. Some people are just entertaining us, which is good. There's nothing wrong with that. You pick it up to be entertained, but I can't do anything if there's not a message. And I like that about Octavia Butler because she's futuristic, she's a visionary. Like a lot of sci-fi writers, she predicts the future. If you read Parable of the Sower, it shows where we are now. And then, Ray Bradbury, Fahrenheit 451, where books, are being burned, or what's happening right now. So there are so many sci-fi writers who tell us what's going on, what's going to happen tomorrow. Some of the Black sci-fi writers now, I just told someone about N.K. Jemisin. She's a Black woman and she's the top fantasy writer, I guess, on the planet right now. And she's a Black woman. Her characters are Black. I haven't read anything by her that her message is Black. What her characters are, and her books are really powerful. But I don't know that I can't say that it doesn't exist, except maybe How Long to Black Future Month. Those are essays and short stories. But she wins the Hugo Award every year. N.K. Jemisin is an award-winning sci-fi writer. Now, the thing I admire about, N.K. Jemisin, I'm going to Nanette Okorafor. Are you familiar with her? The thing about Nanette Okorafor is that I have seen her in rooms. Everyone in the room is white. Most of them are white men. And most of them are older white men in their 60s. The entire room, like maybe she's a judge at a sci-fi convention, whatever it is, sci-fi contest. And then there's Annette, the only Black person, a young 30-something, maybe she's about 40 now, sitting there just, and so and how can I not be inspired by that?
What's your name again?
Naneti, N-N-E, E-D-I.
That's Nigerian.
Yes, the core four. But I was inspired by Mae Jemison too.
Yeah.
I just, when I found out that a Black woman was going to space, and I was so disappointed, a lot of people don't know that she had to leave NASA because she was actually being given a hard time. She never talked about it, she never complained, she just, moved on and did something else. I'm not sure what she's doing, and that's still her record. She was the first Black woman to go to space, and I just thought, how could the courage and the brilliance and space, I am just drawn to space. I tell people, I used to watch Star Trek, and when I would watch Star Trek, I couldn't turn it on at a certain point. I had to watch it from the beginning. I had to go through, space, the final frontier. So I had to go through the whole thing because there's something about that, that belief that we're gonna go on and on and on and make a difference, and I want Black people to be part of it so bad. I'm not sure if I'm answering all of your questions, because you asked quite a few in there. I'm trying to get to them. Is there something missing?
No.
Yeah, okay.
Do we have one final question?
Yes.
Yeah, hello, Franklin Garcia. I hope that those who don't have or haven't read the book, that they walk out tonight with a copy of it. Anyways, I wonder, when you wrote the book, was there concern for you when you wrote it, sort of like a targeted audience in terms of it being the Afro diaspora and outside, and the non-Afro people also? And I say this because as we celebrate Black History Month, I've gone to a few Afro-Latino events, and it is difficult conversation that they have that needs to be had, and they're having it now, right? And I think that in many ways, the Afro diaspora is looking to Black America to lead the way in perception, because a constant is, well, as I was growing up, they talk about all these very difficult things that, light skin, dark skin within the Latinos, and then they talk about, but it's a shameful thing, and I know we don't want to talk about it, but it's a matter of shame, which is a harsh word to use. But it is, because they say, it's all this negativity surrounding Blackness. And so when I look at this, and I'm thinking that, well, wonderful, this is exactly what we need, this kind of exposure, right? Because we need, so when I mentioned the two things, I'm thinking that the one is that you create this with the image of greatness, the content, for a Black person to look at it and say, I can do this. This is incredible. We can rise that high. But then also for the outside world, right? You look at it and can we get, for example, a movie made for something like that, and perhaps elevate the greatness of Black so that we can get more exposure. How has when you were doing this, did you think that maybe at some point this could actually end up exposing Black greatness to an audience greater than the Afro diaspora?
That's a wonderful question, because when I was writing, that was my hope, because I wasn't writing in vain just because, I wanted to see my name or whatever. I'm hoping and praying, it might be after I leave the planet, who knows, that somehow it touches people enough, if it's not this generation, another generation, that we get there. Because I've said to other audiences, think about it, among Europeans, they'll regard their women in high esteem, and they'll say, there's the blonde, oh, she's a brunette, she's a redhead. We don't even have to go to hair. We can just look at our own skin tone. We span the spectrum of, from light to beige to gold to brown to caramel to dark, whatever, and we don't celebrate it in that way. And so I said when I was writing, I'm gonna come up with terminology. I'm gonna have the dark women indigo, the darkest of dark, rare indigo. The brown women will be tawny, and then the really light, bright, tawny, dramatic. Because I just felt like it's time for us to have a little fun with this. Now, we don't touch it because there's so much colorism in our community, and we know that it's rooted in a very painful past. So we've left it alone, and I don't want us taking that baggage into the future. And so I feel like we have to start somewhere and just addressing it in different ways. And it's one thing to write nonfiction, to write essays about it and give lectures about it. It's another thing to put it in the form of a fantasy book that could one day hopefully make it to the big screen. And that's how you really influence people, by doing it in kind of it's almost a subliminal way of doing it. Exactly what you're saying, trying to get us there by just introducing little terms and little expressions like, rare indigo, wow. Because as a matter of fact, I spoke at high school in Detroit. I just met with a group of girls, and when I signed their books, I called one of them Rare Indigo, and she got all excited. She went to her teacher like, she called me the Rare Indigo. That's what I want. But it has to start somewhere. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Denise. Thank you. Oh, you're gonna sign books?
Yes, yeah.
Thank y'all so much for coming out tonight. You can feel free to purchase a book back there at the register with Jonathan. Where's Jonathan? Thank you. Yeah, she will sign books up here.
Oh, and everyone else stick around because we're about to have our open mic, our monthly open mic, Friday night night.